The sterile scent of the lobby hits me first, a manufactured calm that does nothing to settle the hurricane churning in my gut. Outside, the city screams. Inside, a hush. He stands by the window, back to me, a silhouette against the blinding afternoon sun reflecting off glass towers. He's pacing, the sharp click of his expensive shoes on the polished floor the only sound in the vast space. He stops suddenly, spins, and his face, it's a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, something I haven't seen directed solely at me in years. Not like this. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out at first, just a ragged breath. His eyes are fixed on me, but it feels like they're looking through me at something much bigger, much more terrifying to him. He raises a trembling hand, points a shaking finger, not at my face, but past my shoulder at the massive digital display across the street, visible through the panoramic window behind me. My own face stares back, blown up 50 feet high, smiling the easy, confident smile I've finally learned to wear. The campaign tagline blazes beneath it in bold, simple script. His hand drops as if burned. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps me more than you know. It seems like another lifetime now, the quiet hum of the life I shared with him. Comfortable, yes. Predictable. We had a rhythm, a dance of domesticity that I thought was sturdy, unbreakable. Weekends were for the farmer's market, quiet evenings in, the occasional dinner party where I made sure the hors d'oeuvres were perfect, the conversation flowed. My world felt small, neatly contained within the walls of our beautiful apartment, the routine of my part-time graphic design work, the familiar comfort of his presence. I loved him. Or maybe I loved the idea of us, the security, the future we were supposedly building. He was successful, driven, admired. I was supportive. The quiet strength behind the powerful man. At least, that's what I told myself. I had dreams once. Wild, messy things involving paint-stained hands and canvases that spoke louder than words. But life happens. Compromises are made. The edges get smoothed down. My art supplies gathered dust in the spare room, a silent reproach. Sometimes, late at night, I'd open the door to that room, see the covered easels, the stacked canvases, and a pang of something sharp and sad would pierce the practiced contentment. Was this it? Was this all there was? I pushed the thought away. This was good. This was what people wanted. Stability. A good man. A nice home. I had it all. Except sometimes, in the quietest moments, I felt like a character in someone else's story, waiting for my lines, but never quite finding my voice. He never said anything overtly cruel back then, not really. Just dismissive. A patronizing pat on the head when I'd excitedly tell him about a new design project that pushed my creative boundaries. A sigh when I lingered too long in an art supply store. Small things. Paper cuts on the sole that you barely notice until they fester. He'd talk about his work, the deals, the travel, the exciting, dynamic world he inhabited. I'd listen, nod, ask questions. And he'd listen to my day, but his eyes would glaze over. The creative brief for the new bakery logo. The challenging client. The satisfaction of a clean design. He'd smile faintly, nod, and then pivot back to his world. The real world. The one that moved and shook and mattered. My world, in comparison, felt small. Insignificant. And maybe, deep down, I started to believe him. The message was short, clinical. An email, forwarded from his work account to a personal one. A dinner reservation confirmed for 2, under a name that wasn't mine. The date? Last Tuesday. The night, he told me he was working late on a crucial presentation. My blood ran cold. Then hot, then icy. The carefully constructed world began to fracture around the edges. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. I just watched him as he came home, full of fabricated exhaustion, talking about the late hours, the pressure. I watched the lie sit on his face, heavy and repulsive. I stayed silent, the email burning a hole in my pocket. The next morning, I waited until he was dressed, coffee in hand, ready to leave for his dynamic, important day. I just held up my phone, the email open. He froze. The color drained from his face. And then the excuses started. A business meeting, a misunderstanding, a colleague. His voice was a frantic, desperate scramble. I just looked at him, and in that moment, something in me shifted. The love didn't vanish in a puff of smoke. It twisted into something ugly, painful, and laced with a strange, cold clarity. He confessed. Not because he was remorseful, I don't think, but because he was caught. And then came the words that would echo in the empty spaces of my life for months. The real reason, he said, lowering his voice, as if sharing a difficult truth he was burdened to reveal. The reason he had strayed. You're just, he sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair, avoiding my eyes. You're just so boring. Boring. The word hung in the air, a heavy, suffocating blanket. It wasn't screaming, or rage, or tears that followed. It was a quiet, terrifying numbness. Boring. After everything. After years of building a life, sharing dreams, navigating challenges together, the summation of my existence in his eyes was boring. The affair stung, of course. The betrayal was a physical blow. But the word, boring, cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just an accusation. It felt like a diagnosis. A fundamental flaw in my being. Was he right? Was I? Had I become so lost in the comfort, in the routine, in supporting him, that I had become a dull, uninteresting person? The thought was paralyzing. The divorce was swift, brutal. Not just the emotional tearing apart, but the legal battle. He, the man who had built his success on being ruthless and strategic, turned that same cold focus on dismantling my life. His lawyers were sharks. Mine, kind but outmatched. Every asset was contested. Every shared memory seemed to be used as leverage against me. He painted me as ungrateful, as lazy, as someone who had simply coasted on his success. The word boring wasn't used in court, but it hung in the air, unspoken, permeating his arguments, his demeanor, the way he looked at me across the courtroom. He wanted to minimize what I walked away with, to make sure I understood the true cost of daring to disrupt his perfect life. He fought for the apartment, the investments, everything. He wanted to leave me with as little as possible, to make starting over feel insurmountable. He wanted to prove that without him, I was nothing. Just boring. I felt like I was drowning, pulled under by a tide of legal documents, financial statements, and the relentless weight of his contempt. Friends chose sides, or retreated awkwardly. I was alone, adrift, my identity stripped down to that one word, boring. I moved into a tiny, sterile apartment that felt temporary, transient. A place you occupy while you figure out where you're really supposed to be, except I had no idea where that was. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of sorting through the wreckage of my old life and trying to piece together a new one. Applying for jobs I was wildly overqualified for, only to be met with polite rejections or silence. My graphic design skills felt stale, uninspired. The world felt muted, gray. The shame of being too boring clung to me like a second skin. I felt invisible, worthless. The future stretched out before me, bleak and empty. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, the weight of it all crushing me. I'd stare at the ceiling, the silence of the small apartment deafening, and hear his voice whispering that word. Boring. It became my internal soundtrack. I stopped seeing people. I stopped trying. I was in freefall, and hitting rock bottom felt less like a fear and more like an inevitability. One rainy afternoon, sifting through a box labeled miscellaneous, I found it. Tucked beneath old photo albums and dried flowers from a forgotten anniversary was my old sketching pad. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed. I opened it hesitantly. Inside were drawings from years ago, studies of hands, sketches of faces, abstract forms bursting with color and energy. Work I had made before life got comfortable, before I got boring. There was a raw, vibrant quality to them that I hadn't seen in anything I'd touched in years. A flicker, a tiny spark in the overwhelming darkness. It wasn't a grand revelation. It was just there, a quiet reminder of a part of myself I had buried. I started sketching again. Tentatively at first. Just charcoal on cheap paper. No pressure, no expectations. Just the scratchy sound, the feel of the graphite under my fingers. It felt awkward, like using muscles I hadn't worked in years. But slowly, something loosened inside me. The numbness began to recede, replaced by a different kind of focus. I moved to paint. Small canvases. Bright, unapologetic colors. I wasn't trying to be good. I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just moving, expressing the chaos, the anger, the sadness, the faint, persistent echo of that word. The canvases became a visual diary of the storm inside me. They were raw, honest, sometimes ugly. But they were mine. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was creating something real, something that belonged only to me. I started spending hours in that tiny apartment, surrounded by the smell of turpentine and paint, the floor covered in drop cloths. The world outside faded away. The legal battles were still raging, the financial stress a constant hum beneath the surface, but in that space, with my brushes, I was free. I painted faces. Not portraits, but abstract faces, faces that held sorrow, defiance, resilience. Faces that had been called boring, but pulsed with an inner life. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't care. It was simply necessary. A lifeline. A small, local gallery put out a call for submissions for an exhibition titled Resilience. The theme resonated. I hesitated. The thought of putting my raw, vulnerable work out there, work that felt so deeply personal, was terrifying. The fear of being judged, of being found lacking, of someone else confirming that I was, in fact, boring, was almost debilitating. But the alternative was staying hidden, small, defined by his words. A quiet anger solidified into determination. I wouldn't let him define me. I wouldn't let that word be my tombstone. I chose one of my most recent pieces, a large canvas dominated by a single, abstract face, eyes wide and fierce, the colors vibrant and clashing, full of a chaotic energy that felt like the truth of my experience. I submitted it. I didn't expect anything. Getting accepted felt like a small miracle. Seeing it hang on the gallery wall, surrounded by other artists' work, was surreal. It was just a small exhibition in a quiet neighborhood gallery, but for me, it felt like a declaration. I am here. I am not boring. Then came the phone call. Out of the blue. A marketing executive from a massive, globally recognized company. They had seen my piece at the gallery. They were launching a new campaign. A campaign focused on authenticity, on real people, on finding strength in unexpected places. They didn't want models. They wanted a face that told a story. They wanted my face. They loved the raw emotion in my painting, and when they saw me, they saw the story behind it. They weren't just interested in using my artwork. They wanted me to be the face of the campaign. It felt like a dream. Surreal.
Impossible.
I listened to the details, the scale of it, the global reach, and my head spun. This wasn't just a local gallery showing. This was billboards, television commercials, magazine spreads, digital ads everywhere.
Me.
The woman who was too boring. The contract was immense. Life-changing. The irony wasn't lost on me. My face, the face of the boring woman, was about to become instantly recognizable to millions. The money from the campaign settlement alone dwarfed anything he had grudgingly allowed me to keep in the divorce. The universe, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. The entire process was a whirlwind: meetings, legal reviews, usage rights for my painting, which they also wanted to feature. They wanted to capture the raw, unpolished feel of my art in the campaign's aesthetic.
They wanted the real me.
The photo shoot wasn't like anything I expected. No heavy makeup, no artificial poses. They wanted my natural expression, the quiet strength they saw. They talked about the story behind the campaign, the narrative of finding yourself, of inner resilience. They were describing my life. I kept it quiet, almost compulsively so. It felt too big, too fragile to speak aloud. The divorce was finalized, the painful chapter closed, or so I thought. I hadn't seen him, hadn't spoken to him directly since the final court date. The silence had been a strange comfort. The campaign launch date approached. I felt a mix of exhilaration and sheer terror. What would it be like, seeing my face everywhere? What would people think? What would he think? The thought of his reaction was a complex knot of emotions: dread, anticipation, a cold, quiet sense of satisfaction. Not revenge, I told myself.
Not really.
Just vindication. Proof, not just to him but to myself, that I wasn't boring. That there was more to me than he ever saw or cared to see. And now, here we are. The sterile lobby. The harsh sunlight. His face, contorted in disbelief and rage. He paces, runs a hand through his hair again. That familiar gesture, but this time it's fueled by panic, not arrogance. He points again at the screen across the street, my face beaming down. A beacon of quiet defiance in the heart of the city he thought he owned. What? What, I asked this. He finally spits out, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper of his usual booming authority. What have you done? My voice is calm, steady. A stark contrast to the storm on his face. It's a campaign, I say simply. For a global brand. They wanted an authentic face. He stares at me, his eyes darting between my face and the massive image outside. He shakes his head like a dog trying to dislodge water from its ears.
But you.
He trails off, unable to say the word. Boring? I finish for him, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. Is that what you were going to say?
He flinches as if I've slapped him.
Don't be ridiculous, he snaps, finding his voice, though it's still shaky.
How?
How did you even? He gestures vaguely at the screen, the city, the world my face is now commanding.
That's
my city. That's my world. You don't belong there. The arrogance is still there, buried deep beneath the panic. He actually believes the world he operates in is his personal domain, and my presence in it is some kind of cosmic error. Funny, I say, my voice still quiet, still calm. They seem to think I fit right in. He takes a step towards me, his eyes narrowing. This is some kind of stunt, isn't it? To get back at me?
To
make me look bad. He actually thinks my global success is a personal attack orchestrated purely for his benefit. The sheer self-absorption is breathtaking. This isn't about you, I say, and I realize, with a profound sense of peace, that it's true. It started as a way to survive, then a way to heal, and somewhere along the line, it became about finding myself. His opinion, his insults, his attempts to diminish me, they had become irrelevant to the process itself. The outcome was simply a beautiful, monumental side effect. He laughs then, a harsh, brittle sound that doesn't reach his eyes. Not about me? Please. Suddenly you're some kind of media darling? Overnight, you couldn't even handle a dinner party without being awkward. That dry humor I found in the darkest moments surfaces now. Maybe I just needed a bigger audience, I say. His face hardens. This is a mistake. You'll be exposed.
People will see.
They'll see you're not that person they're selling. You're not. You're not interesting. He's clinging to that word, his last defense, his last weapon. I look at him, really look at him. The man who stripped me down, who tried to leave me with nothing, who called me boring as if it were the ultimate insult. And I look at the screen behind me, at my face, serene and strong, broadcasting a message of resilience to millions. The contrast is stark. He is trapped in his small, angry world of control and judgment. I am stepping into a world of my own making. You know, I say softly, my voice barely above a whisper now, but it cuts through the sterile air. When you called me boring, I believed you for a long time. It almost broke me. I pause, letting the weight of that sink in. His eyes flickered, perhaps a hint of something that looked like regret, quickly masked by defensiveness. But then I realized something. You didn't call me boring because I was actually boring. You called me boring because I didn't shine the way you wanted me to. Because my light was different from yours. Because I wasn't a reflection of your excitement, your drive, your idea of what was important. He opens his mouth to interrupt, but I hold up a hand, stopping him cold. The woman who is too quiet, too hesitant is gone. My passion wasn't about boardroom battles or public victories. I continue, my voice gaining strength, not in volume, but in power. It was quiet. It was internal. It was in the colors, the textures, the stories hidden beneath the surface. You couldn't see it because you weren't looking for it. You were only looking for yourself. He stares at me, speechless for the first time. The rage on his face is now mixed with something else, something like fear. He sees it. He sees that this isn't just about an ad campaign. It's about everything he tried to take, everything he dismissed, coming back in a form he can't control, can't buy, can't diminish. He called me boring to make himself feel bigger, more exciting, justified in his betrayal. And in doing so, he unleashed something in me he couldn't possibly comprehend. The quiet strength he overlooked was my foundation. The internal world he ignored was where I rebuilt myself. The boring woman wasn't boring. She was just quiet. And sometimes, quiet is the most powerful force of all. He takes a step back, bumping into a sleek, modern sculpture. He doesn't look at the sculpture. His eyes are still fixed on my face, both the one standing before him and the one towering over the city. He looks smaller now, diminished by the sheer scale of what's happening around him, what's happening to me. The man who craved control is facing something utterly outside of his grasp. I have to go, he stammers, his voice barely audible. He doesn't wait for a response. He turns and walks away quickly, his shoulders hunched, the sharp click of his shoes receding, swallowed by the manufactured calm of the lobby. He doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. My face is everywhere. My story is being told. And he is no longer the narrator. Stepping outside is like entering a different world. The city air is crisp, loud, alive. I look up. There I am. On a billboard. On the side of a bus. On a screen in a shop window. It's overwhelming, surreal. My face, the face he called boring, is a part of the urban landscape, a silent, constant presence. People walk past, some glance up, some don't notice. To them, I am just an image, a part of a campaign. But to me, and now to him, I am a story. The feeling isn't exactly triumph. It's something more complex. There's satisfaction, yes, a deep, bone-deep sense of vindication. But there's also a quiet sadness for the woman I was, the years I spent dimming my own light. And there's a strange, detached amusement at the cosmic irony of it all. The man who sought excitement and validation outside our marriage, who dismissed me as mundane, is now forced to confront my image wherever he goes, a constant, silent reminder that the boring woman found her own kind of extraordinary. My victory isn't in his defeat, though that has its own bitter flavor. My victory is in no longer needing him, or anyone else, to tell me who I am.
I know.
And the world, it seems, is finally starting to see it too. The silence is no longer empty. It's full of possibility. The quiet life wasn't boring. It was simply waiting for me to find my voice. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear a version in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.